We usually think of sentimentality as something benign, but in fact, sentimentality can be dangerous. Why? Because at its core, sentimentality is a form of denying reality. Hi, this is Ava, and today we're wrapping up our series with talking about sentimentality as a common trait of people who are drawn to narcissists and whom narcissists target. Here's an interesting thing. Sentimentality is a trait that belongs to both the narcissist and his or her partner. It's only when both are engaged in it that sentimentality weaves its magic. And I don't mean magic in a positive sense here, just to be clear. The narcissist, in an effort to appear normal, remember they have shallow affect, fakes emotion and exaggerates things, turns up the intensity, if you will, to create what's called a fairy tale effect. And it draws you deeper into this trance, you see. In previous videos, we talked about 6 other traits, and these traits are interlocking. They're forming a personality model of the perfect target. And those were conscientiousness, hyperempathy, cooperativeness, optimism, fear of failure, and the last one, which was on hyperattachment. Links to all those videos are in the notes section below. So today we're going to explore sentimentality as a vulnerability that narcissists exploit in toxic relationships to hook you, to keep you in, and if you happen to get away, to get you back. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you 9 ways in which you may want to start mitigating this tendency in yourself, as ultimately it is really up to you to break this cycle. And I really want to emphasize this point that it's up to you. If you want to heal, you have to stop being passive and let life happen to you. You have to stop waiting for the narcissist to leave you alone or to do this or that, because they won't. They have a vested interest in keeping you in. So you're going to have to start to make new decisions, even though they may not feel comfortable. And you may have to also start taking new action, which more than anything will reshuffle what I call the internal landscape and bring you gifts too. Gifts in the form of raised confidence, self-esteem, self-respect. See, a lot of people ask me, how do I do this? How do I raise my self-esteem? How do I raise my self-worth? And they usually, and I was there too, get at it backwards. The thing is, to get those raised, you have to start taking new action. In my conversations with my clients, this comes up a lot, that you cannot count on the narcissist or the psychopath to ever leave you alone. There are times, of course, when he or she will not hoover, but in general, this is pretty rare. To learn more about this, you may want to see my video about, I think it's called Feeling Bad Because the Narcissist is Not Hoovering. I'm going to link it down below for you. Even if they do move on to new supply, they tend to leave their doors to you intentionally open. This is not something that you should be happy or proud about, though, because this happiness of being wanted by the narcissist, being coveted by them, is really just based on an illusion, in thinking that you matter to this person the way that people matter to you, people that you care about. But it could not be further from the truth. You need to remember the narcissists think first and foremost about themselves, their emotional and material comforts. Also, they're with you to control you and usually, eventually, to destroy you, not to love you. Narcissist love is contorted and conditional. So please, please don't fall for this. Don't feel flattered because a narcissist keeps bringing you back. You're going to have to shut the door. You're going to have to do this because they won't. Okay, let's get back to sentimentality. What is sentimentality? Well, it's a form of self-indulgent sadness, nostalgia, that comes as a result of remembering something, longing for something that is no longer here. Or it's a way of experiencing the moment in a way that's too much, too sweet, too over the top. Sound familiar? This is how narcissists tend to operate because, like I just said, they lack emotional affect. So they have to take it to the extreme to come across as believable. This way, they also create intensity, which is often mistaken for intimacy. Now, I'm not saying here that narcissists don't feel anything. I've been asked that in my comments. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they tend to oscillate between extremes, either feeling completely empty or feeling things very, very intensely. And this intensity is responsible for making you dysregulated emotionally and feeling like you never again will experience anything like this with anyone else. So you can see how this can prevent you from leaving this toxic dynamic for quite a long time. And the truth is that ideally you really don't want to experience this ever again. What you want to experience is something that's much more balanced, much more healthy, which doesn't mean boring, just to be clear. Contrary to what sentimental people may think, sentimentality is not really your friend. It may seem to be benign, but it's not. Unchecked, it can drive you into a peak of elation and then throw you into a pit of depression and feed you lies about yourself, others, and the world. Sentimentality, you see, it gets in the way of you experiencing reality. It distorts your perspective. If, let's say, it were a pudding, it would consist of things like strong emotions, series of stories that support a certain paradigm, myths that you tell yourself and you share with others, you've heard from others, from movies, from stories, from song, and so on. All sorts of beliefs, etc. It creates a bit of like a net, see? And you're in it, you're caught in it. And it prevents you from seeing things for what they really are. These things can certainly feel true, especially if you've carried them for a long time, you've gotten used to them, but they're not necessarily the truth. One of such myths, and that comes up a lot in this field of narcissistic abuse, is the myth of soulmates or twin flames. To hear more about what I have to say about this, please see my video on spirituality, cults, and twin flames, which I will also link down below. It is a dangerous myth that can blind you to the truth of the relationship's destructive dynamic and bind you to a spiritual predator. In a nutshell, sentimentality creates an erroneous reality map laden with beliefs, feelings, nostalgia, wistfulness, and usually melancholy. It begins with making memories, right? Future faking, anchoring, the usual mix. To learn more about how narcissists and other manipulators use this powerful NLP technique, please see my video on anchoring. What ensues is an internal labyrinth in which it is really, really easy to get lost. And getting lost is exactly what it's all about. Again, you can watch my videos on trance and hypnosis to learn more about this phenomenon. Basically, though, when someone wants to hypnotize you, first they need to confuse you because the mind is not comfortable floating in space without an anchor. So it will latch onto the very next thing that it hears. This is how manipulators, narcissists, psychopaths, and all sorts of other seducers do this. They throw you off balance and then they tell you exactly what you want to hear, which are usually sweet nothings, so that you can anchor and associate their presence with the momentary pleasure that this brings you. You see how it's all interconnected. It can easily make you feel like you have just met a savior, when in fact, he or she is both the oppressor and the rescuer from the very oppression that he or she are causing. See, they play both roles. Well, actually, there's a third role that they play very well, and I would say that it's probably their favorite. I wonder if you can guess what that is. It's the role of the victim, of course. So you see, it's like this triangle that forms, and they oscillate, they switch between these roles, and they pull you into that. If you have a relationship with them, you can't escape it. They pull you into that, and you play those roles as well, right? So it's the role of the oppressor, the rescuer, and the victim. Sentimentality is dishonest. It's a form of lie you tell yourself. It's an embellished memory, an oversimplification. It's like an image. No, it's an enhanced afterglow of a past experience. All the horrible things that he had done to you get lost here. What remains is like an echo of longing, pulling you in, drawing you in. Instead of remembering what really happened, you focus on all the sweet things he did for you, or she, because of course it happens to both genders. And you miss a huge part of the picture. You think of the flowers, the vacations, the sex, the dinners, and forget about the criticisms, put-downs, jealousy bouts, possessiveness, rages, threats, the time he had hit you, the time she had thrown food on you, the time he had slammed the doors in your face. This thinking, unfortunately, camouflages the truth and minimizes the damage. Except that here you are the agent of minimization. Sentimentality is black or white. It offers only two alternatives, which does away with life's complexity, which again simplifies it and contorts it. The narcissist, of course, loves this because he wants you to believe that you're the bad person and they're the good, they're the victim. And you're the one to blame. You see, there's just two alternatives, no more. In the beginning, of course, she or he will idealize you and then degrade you. Again, opposites. There's no middle ground. Only stories and myths of how you destroy the most beautiful love there is. The stories that will later fester in your mind and burn a hole in your soul. Don't let this happen. Recognize it for what it is. It's a form of trance mixed with toxic sentimentality, and the two feed one another. Sentimentality breeds nostalgia, the belief that things used to be better. It's easy to fall for this one when you're hurting, but this will pass. The idea that it was better is a complete fantasy. You are temporarily drowning in the sea of grief, which is why it seems like everything that happened before was better. But once the sunshine starts to break through, you'll see how fortunate you are that you got away. In narcissists and psychopaths, sentimentality plays the role of faking emotions. In the research that I did for this video, I came across an article that talked about Hitler, who was apparently known as a very sentimental person who cried a lot, as reported by one of his kin, Mussolini. So Hitler loved art, and apparently every time he saw something that moved him deeply, he cried. So they exaggerate, you see, to make themselves appear human and benign. Sentimentality becomes a mask behind which they hide. Oscar Wilde said something really profound, which is that a sentimentalist is one who desires to have the luxury of emotion without paying for it. Isn't that just so accurate here? Again, I'm going to say this again. Sentimentalist is one who desires to have the luxury of an emotion without paying for it. Sentimentality or excessive emotionality, sweetness, is a defense reaction used against acknowledging more painful emotions, particularly anger, shame, or grief, which are really heavy to process. Ultimately, it's a way of denying reality. Why are you sentimental? I think that you need it to practice focusing on the positive to survive in this relationship. Unfortunately, this has become a habit, which you need to break ASAP. Because the longer you keep those positive images and feelings inside you, the stronger the sentiment grows, and the more you will miss your ex and be open to hoovering. So what to do? I promised to give you 9 tips, and here they are. They are, of course, also interlocking, just like the traits. And if you work on one, the others will also grow. So here they are. Number 1, use your sentimentality. Take advantage of the fact that you're now aware of the fact that you are sentimental, if what I had just said really resonated with you. Use it to spot your triggers, to discover yourself, to become your own detective, and write about them. Bring them into your consciousness. Because as long as they're in your subconscious, they have power over you. But the moment you shine a light on them, they dissolve. From a monster, they become like a little ant that you can just flick off your shoulder. So name them. Once it happens, once you feel the trigger, once you feel like you're ruminating, like you are, longing for something, just say, oh my God, I'm longing for him or her. I'm thinking about it. Oh, this thing reminds me of them. Say it out loud and ideally write it down. Explore it. Spend, 5 minutes on it. It's going to hurt. Feel the emotion and just get it out of your system. Number 2, and this is critical, no pun intended, learn critical thinking. Learn about the basic thinking fallacies that we humans make all the time and try to spot them when you watch TV, for example. The news is politics is filled with fallacies. So it's a good place to practice. But of course, if you have narcissists around you, and actually the average person, we stumble all the time and make thinking errors. There's about 10 or 20 of the main ones. There are 2 sources I'd love to point you towards. There's a link I'm going to include below this video. That's one of my favorite little pages that I like to send to my clients who are struggling with this, because it's just very brief, very to the point, kind of funny and punchy, and also illustrated, which helps. And there is a book, if you really want to dive deeper, by Glenn Schiraldi, and it's called The Self-Esteem Workbook. It's fantastic. He spends quite a lot of time on teaching you critical thinking, especially in the context of reviewing your life and your traumas. So do this. Put in the work. You're not going to regret it. This is going to come handy for the rest of your life. Number 3, learn to discern truth from fiction. Question things. It takes practice again, and critical thinking will help you do this. It's kind of like the prerequisite to start to question things and learn to discern what's real and what isn't. Because there's so much illusion, mental stuff, thought forms that we take as truth, which it isn't. It's just what it is. It's thoughts. And we know how quickly thoughts can shift. Number 4, dive into life's complexity. Don't oversimplify. Learn to be comfortable there. When I came up with this point, it made me think of when I used to train to be a yoga teacher. And we would go through gruesome training, sweat dripping on the floor, legs shaking, everything just, we're barely able to, towards the end, withstand the intensity of it. But our teachers kept repeating, keep your face calm, keep your face calm, and how that translated into the rest of the body, into the muscles. You felt yourself sinking in, going deeper and just breathing through it. I use this to this day when I'm overwhelmed by intense emotions. And I want to tell you, it really, really helps. And same thing with just tolerating complexity of life. Because the truth is that everything is made of so many influences, so many factors, So, and we like to simplify, we like to give away with this, do away with complexity. But unfortunately, that makes us miss out on a big part of life. And this nicely segues me into number 5, which is get comfortable with all of your emotions, the entire array. And here's another one. It's really important how to do this, is to feel your feelings raw. Don't feed them with sentimental thoughts that keep perpetuating the false story. Emotions, when felt raw, take only about 90 seconds to pass, just like a cloud going through the sky, and then you feel it depart. But when you resist it, of course, it gets bigger and it keeps haunting you. Number 6, don't mythologize the relationship. These are all mental traps. This was just a relationship. You can tell yourself instead. It was a twisted one for sure, a weird one, a different one, but it was not a fairy tale. Get this straight. Find the middle ground. This is number 7, between naivete and cynicism. See, another polarity we jump into. It's either that everyone's amazing, everyone's loving, everyone's an angel, the naivete of it all, or cynicism. Everyone's a narcissist, everyone's horrible, people are all about themselves, which is a phase we need to pass through. It's like you swing one extreme, then you swing the other extreme, and then eventually find the middle ground. Now, what you want to do eventually is to learn to trust yourself and life. But this will come usually later, in the later stages of your healing. So don't try to speed it up if you're in a stage of resentment, if you're in a stage of feeling like everyone's dangerous. It's okay to hide in your cave, to lick your wounds, to be safe. Safety is most important. So this middle ground between naivete and cynicism is going to come to you organically when it's time, when you process the heavier stuff. Number 8, and this is also something that comes a little later, is practice healthy skepticism, also directed towards yourself. Ask yourself, what if what I thought about life, about relationships, about myself is actually not true? What if certain elements are, but maybe others aren't? What if I don't know everything? What if the truth is much more broader and complex? Now, to be clear, I don't mean here to question the fact that you just exited a toxic relationship. Because if this wasn't a toxic relationship and if you weren't suffering, then you wouldn't be watching this video. So let's be clear with that. What I mean rather is the nuances of our experience and how sometimes we make assumptions about things that are not true at all. This should be a freeing experience, not an experience that feels heavy and intense and like you're choking, right? When you do away with an assumption that is false, you feel a sense of relief. You feel it literally in your body, viscerally. So that's what I'm talking about. Healthy skepticism is really good. It also is going to prevent you from falling for false prophets, from snake charmers, and all sorts of people who are peddling illusion. And finally, number 1, and of course I needed to include this because it's all about soul GPS, is trust your intuition. Remember, love is not supposed to hurt. It's supposed to make you soar. So that's it for today. And a final note for this video is if you are struggling right now, I invite you to my website where you can find 2 programs that I put together. One is free, and it's a 3-step process to help you navigate yourself out of the state of alarm. It's called SOS. And the other one, it's a 12-part program, which you can do 1 part a week or at any speed you desire, called Unchained. And it is specifically designed for you to help you drop the trauma bond and redirect your attention from the other to yourself. Thank you so much. I look forward to your comments and questions, and I'm sending you lots of love.